Hello, friends.
We're live.
Welcome. We're live. Welcome to episode 0 of the Banners Fly Forever podcast. Little passion project Tim and myself have put together. You might remember us from our Dynasty Nerd streams. Getting a little bit of echo there for a second. All right, sorry. This is episode 0. This is our introductory pod. We are live right now during the national championship game. Just wanted to get on here, work out a few kinks, talk about what we're going to be doing this year for you guys. Tim, tell the people who you are. What are you excited for?
Yeah, hey, Tim here. I'm excited for this. This is there's been kind of an ongoing back and forth between Dan and I about trying to start something up where we get on weekly, even maybe more frequently than weekly, and just talk football, anything from the games that are coming up, the rookies that are coming up in drafts, fantasy football, betting on football, coaching carousel, everything. And Dan and I have a pretty big passion for football, and it just seems like a good opportunity to be able to go on and kind of share that with everybody. I know from our work last year, working on the NFL draft and all the lead up to that Dan, like myself, is pretty passionate about, the college to NFL transfer, but then also what happens with these guys once they get to the pros. So we're just excited to have an opportunity to kind of talk things through with the league and everything that goes on in the NFL. So this is kind of just this little passion project that we have, hoping to become something that can be fun for everybody to join in and talk along with us week to week. Dan, we're now into playoff football, so we're transitioning out of the regular season and into the playoffs. So kind of an interesting time to launch a podcast, I would assume.
Yeah, it's also Black Monday.
Absolutely.
Which I'm sure some of you have noticed with the nonstop Schefter and Rappaport notifications today about we kicked off the firing cycle with the Cinderella man, we'll call him. Clock struck midnight, and Arthur Smith.
Yeah,
he was out of Atlanta, and I think I saw fireworks in the sky at midnight last night from fantasy football players
all the way from New Jersey. All the way from New Jersey, you can see the Atlanta fireworks. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's kind of fitting, right? That the last moments we saw Arthur Smith on a field is screaming at another coach about the kneel down rushing touchdown at the end of the game, and it was just kind of fitting to see what was a tumultuous time in Atlanta end that way. I know from a fantasy perspective, when we talk fantasy football, there's a lot of people excited about the chances of Kyle Pitts or Drake London or Bijan Robinson becoming a little more relevant, but we'll see what happens. Definitely interesting. That division's been so for the taking now for years, and Tampa Bay just keeps winning it. It's kind of surprising. I mean, even after the year, Brady leaves, Baker Mayfield rolls in, beats a team that had taken him on in Carolina, and wins the division. It's just what a crazy division.
I know, and now they get to host the Philadelphia Eagles
right
next Monday night, which, I mean, talk about two ships passing in the night. You got the Bucs, who, I mean, they're low key a really hot team right now.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like not a lot of people in national media have been talking about it, but Baker's been playing good, not great.
Yeah, sure.
He's been playing well enough to get the team obviously to the playoffs. And then Philadelphia, it's kind of like, everything that has gone wrong, could go wrong, has gone wrong since, since they beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead.
Right.
It feels like 2 months ago at this point.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and arguably out of all the playoff teams, Philly maybe the worst going into the playoffs. I mean, like it's kind of hard to argue right now with back-to-back losses against the Cardinals and the Giants, who are both, well, I guess top six teams in the NFL draft, where their picks are. It's not how you want to be playing going into the playoffs. And like you said, I mean, anything that could go wrong is going wrong. Their defense doesn't look like it has answers. The offense isn't clicking at all. I mean, are we talking that Philly might not make it past the first round when they visit Tampa?
I mean, I feel like the first thing me and my friends talked about was what's going to be the upset this weekend.
Sure.
Obviously there's home teams hosting playoff games that are not the current betting favorites.
Sure.
Houston would be one of them facing the Browns on Saturday. But
right.
I feel like as far as teams that are home and also underdogs, I feel like Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
probably has the best shot at an upset right now.
Yeah,
You know, the Kansas City Buffalo matchup, Kansas City
can
is
see Miami.
sorry, Kansas City Miami matchup. Kansas City is the underdog at home.
Yeah,
So it's not, that's not a home I'm sorry, that is a home upset.
sure.
But that is, I guess, a little less crazy to talk about.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean,
because Kansas City is also a team that is kind of hobbling into the playoffs themselves.
right, right. Well, and I mean, this is the NFL, right? This is we're now. I forget how many years in a row. It was 13 or maybe even more than that years in a row where like 4 teams that didn't make the playoffs the year before make the playoffs the following year. There's just constant turnover in the NFL, right? And even our top teams, like pretty much everybody walking into the season would have said it's going to be Kansas City out of the AFC. It's going to be Philly out of the NFC. You might have San Francisco in there. You might have Buffalo or Cincinnati in there, kind of was the original thought process from a lot of people. But those are kind of the teams, the same ones that were at the top for a while. And now you look at the Chiefs and the Eagles, and it's arguably the worst 2 of the home playoff teams that are going to be playing this weekend. So yeah, it's definitely interesting. But how do you bet against Patrick Mahomes too? That's
Yeah,
the question.
it's me and my friends, we kind of agree that Mahomes was entering that Brady tier where you don't put money against Brady and you just
Right.
don't put money against Mahomes. And like, I won't be surprised if Kansas City wins that game. You got Miami, they're also kind of hobbling into the playoffs. They're missing
Mhm.
Bradley Chubb, they're missing Jalen Phillips, like their 2 top pass rushers.
Yep.
So we've seen that defense take a couple steps back. You know, Tyreek Hill's not. I mean, nobody's 100% nowadays,
Sure.
but Jalen Waddle missed the last game. Tyreek Hill didn't look like his normal self.
Yeah.
And
Mostert's been hobbled a little bit.
yeah, and I don't want to call Miami a fair weather team, but the thoughts of them going to Arrowhead, where it's supposed to be, I think, 2 degrees
Yeah, they're saying
next
if you get
weekend.
the negative with the wind chill for sure.
Yeah, it feels like the type of game where Mahomes is going to pull some, Kelsey type stuff. And I mean, we're talking fantasy. You got to talk about, Rashi Rice, like
Yeah.
he is like flaming hot,
Yep.
rising up dynasty rankings. I had a chance to meet him at the Senior Bowl last year, and he very impressive skill set. Um, Talking to him, he seems like a little bit of a hothead kind of like diva mentality,
Okay.
but I'm sure, he
Sometimes you
got,
need that, man.
yeah, sometimes you need that, sometimes you need somebody to step up and be like the top dog. Cause
Yeah.
think about their receiver corps since Tyreek Hill left, it's
No, for sure.
Marcus Valdez-Scantling, Kadarius Toney, Miko Hardman. Like, they haven't had anybody Sky Moore, they haven't had anybody like step up either physically as far as play style goes, but also like I feel like mentally and emotionally.
Right.
Kadarius Toney has that attitude, but almost in a terrible way. He's like like the villain version of that
Sure.
alpha dog mentality.
Sure.
So I think that his connection with Mahomes, it's I mean, would it be a bold take to say that he has like a Gabe Davis type of playoff game?
I mean, that
Like,
absolutely can happen. Like
yeah.
it's in the realm of possibilities, but I mean, it is just amazing how much those receivers have let him down this year. I mean,
Oh
like
yeah, I know.
it was one of my favorite tweets the entire football season was when there was clear interference against Marquez Valdez-Scantling on a deep ball, and somebody said it hit him, it hit him like right in the hands, but it was completely interfered with. And somebody said, "Well, that ball was technically uncatchable because you threw it to MVS." And I was like, "Yeah, I mean that's kind of how it's been the entire year. Like he just keeps having receivers letting him down over and over again." And I mean, that's where to kind of round it into my own fandom, that's where the Bears are sitting right now with this, having the first pick in the draft and trying to choose between, do you stick with Justin Fields? Do you go with a rookie quarterback? Is you sit here and you look at Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback in the league by far, and arguably, a guy who can win with anybody in his offense. Well, he's struggling big time now that he doesn't have any weapons around him and a pretty weak offensive line as well. Are you better off building the rest of the team up around a guy, and then bringing the superstar in? Now, when you already have Mahomes, that's great. So you're not really worried about it. But like, remember like back in last summer when we were going like, where's DeAndre Hopkins going to go? Like where will he land? And it was like the Chiefs didn't really want to pay up the money for him or anything, but like man, could you imagine if he just had one more reliable guy, like even
Yeah.
old
Yeah.
DeAndre Hopkins? Like he had a pretty solid year with the Titans, actually. And that's the
I
Titans, man.
I mean, I also want to say like there is a thing of like giving your young quarterback like a great tool like that. 'Cause I don't think we would have seen the development out of Will Levis this year if it
True.
wasn't for DeAndre Hopkins. Like you imagine that Titans team rolling out, Traylon Burks, Chig, who else was down there? Kyle Phillips.
Yep.
Um, like I don't think we
That's
see
kind
I
of
don't
it.
yeah, I don't think we see any development at all out of
Yeah,
Levis. Um, and you could see that, when you look at the target share when
sure.
Hopkins and Levis are together versus it's Tannehill or when Hopkins is off the field or anybody.
Yep.
Like Levis just keys in on Hopkins, and you kind of give that young quarterback that guy who is going to pull the ball in no matter what.
Yeah.
It helps account for maybe a little bit of a lack of processing speed.
Yeah.
It helps with a little bit of like getting your accuracy and velocity down in the NFL level, coming from the SEC, from the college level.
Totally.
Like I think that is so understated when it comes to a team building philosophy. And just as well as anyone, you look at the Bears, like they waited till what, year 3 to get
Yep.
Fields, DJ Moore.
Exactly.
And what did he have before that? Like Darnell Mooney he's a great burner.
Yeah.
He's good for a seam route every once in a while.
He's a
but
solid wide receiver 3,
Yeah,
like
and
that
then
on most teams.
they had that Chase Claypool trade, which
Didn't work out.
I won't talk about that.
Yeah,
I don't
didn't
wanna-
work out.
I want to make you upset.
Didn't work out.
And then honestly, prior to DJ Moore, was it Cole Kmet? Was probably
Yeah, I mean Cole Kmet's probably your next best option. I mean, this is Equanimeous St. Brown, and
I know they brought in Allen Robinson, and but he was hurt and just
right,
shell
exactly.
his former self.
It was kind of every wide receiver that had like just not made the team on a better team was like everybody they were bringing in. I mean, they brought in N'Keal Harry for a little while. He caught a touchdown with the Bears. Like it was just like a who's who of guys you had heard of at one point and maybe had a decent game once in a while. But like exactly like you're saying is what is the development of the quarterback if he has weapons the whole time? Like when I watch Justin Fields play now, I see a guy who has multiple hitches every time he's stepping back, and he just doesn't have the confidence to throw the ball. Like he's constantly going, when's the point I need to bail out and just use my legs because I know I'm a good runner. And he doesn't trust his receivers to make catches. He doesn't trust his receivers to make plays. So if it is not like college open, he's not throwing the ball. And so like if you watch the QB school ever and they talk about like being pro open, he won't pull the trigger on those throws half the time. He's just not confident enough in any of the receivers that he's had out there, and for good reason. And that has totally hindered his development. But we sit here on Black Monday and there's a team, we haven't heard anything from, and, we don't know, are they going to keep Matt Eberflus or move on from Matt Eberflus? But this is kind of that weird point that are you going to, for the third straight time, keep a head coach and then draft a rookie quarterback, which is what they've done the last 2 sequences. They held on to John Fox and they drafted Mitch Trubisky. And a year later, they fired John Fox and brought in Matt Nagy. And then they drafted Justin Fields. And a year later, they fired Matt Nagy. And then they brought in Matt Eberflus. So are you about to do it again where you're going to keep Matt Eberflus, draft Caleb Williams 1 overall, and then a year later
get
fire
rid of
Matt
Eberflus?
And then you got Caleb Williams going into the second year, new offensive coordinator, new system, and all that. It's
you kind of want
right?
your quarterback and head coaching hire to be aligned in the same time.
Exactly.
Because that it puts kind of their careers in alignment. They have to develop and succeed together because they are probably both on the same time scale as far as continuing their career in that city.
Yeah.
Because then you also got to think about GM head coach hiring cycles and relationship, because we're seeing a lot of places where there's both no GM and no head coach right now.
Exactly.
You look at Las Vegas, you look at Carolina, Washington, I believe got rid of their general manager. Yeah. And then I know Atlanta kept on to Fontenot, the GM down there. So that's just a head coaching hire. But there's like a dynamic that you got to think about when you bring these people in together versus one already being there and then bringing one in fresh, and like when you go back and forth between that. But So I got to ask you, I saw the clip from Justin Fields, his press conference yesterday. Was that a goodbye Chicago?
Felt like a goodbye, didn't
It
it?
felt like a goodbye Chicago.
I mean, it could be. I don't think he knows whether they're moving on from him or not. Like, I don't think that decision was completely made.
I don't think anybody could know at this point.
Exactly.
Honestly.
I mean, I don't even know if Ryan Poles completely knows at this point. Like, I think he's going to have to seek out what is offered for Justin Fields, and he's going to have to know what's offered for that first pick overall. And everyone's talking about, and honestly, where I'm at is whatever Ryan Poles decides, I'm good to roll with it. Like, that's I'm done trying to act like I know what the better choice is. I have my preference, which is trade the first pick because you saw the haul that it got you last year when you traded the first pick, and start figuring out the rest of the team that has holes everywhere. But if he's like Caleb Williams is the Jesus and we got to bring him in, then you bring him in. I get it. But until you know what you can get for either side of those deals, you have to kind of seek each out. And so I think it's going to be a little slower process than it was last year. I think they were pretty set on keeping Fields for a third year last year. This year's a lot different. But the reality is, I mean, yesterday really puts a damper on, the season, losing to your rivals again and looking outclassed again. But this is a team that had 3 historic fourth quarter meltdowns this year. And if they win those 3 games, they're a playoff team right now. They're a playoff team with the number 1 pick overall. So it's really hard to kind of go like, this team definitely has to get the next quarterback instead of Fields. My thing is, everybody talks about resetting the QB clock, right? That having a rookie deal for a QB is one of the biggest cheats in sports. And I get it. But if you actually break down the amount that they could save at other positions by getting like 3 first-round picks out of this 1 pick, this could be, instead of getting a veteran wide receiver, a veteran offensive tackle, and a veteran defensive end, you could have rookies at all 3 of those spots. So the extra money that you're paying for a veteran quarterback kind of comes out in the wash when there's 3 other guys at 3 other positions that are getting rookie contracts. Quarterback contract's always gonna be the highest, so there is, something to balance there. But if you're putting,
it's also got to be the right quarterback.
Exactly right.
Quarterback contract's not just a flat number; it's a flat number attached to a skill set.
Exactly, and you're putting all your eggs in one basket when you're taking the 1 pick, right? You're saying Caleb Williams is our savior, and if he doesn't work out for any number of reasons, he's a diva, he is a bust, he decides he doesn't want to play in Chicago, whatever it is. If something happens, it's gone. That's everything. That was everything you invested into it. But when you can diversify that into a veteran player and 3 rookies, then all of a sudden it's like, all right, we got to miss on a lot of things for this not to have been somewhat worth our while. So that's kind of where I'm sitting with it.
Yeah. I mean, there's also a point with, Ryan Poles and his career in Chicago. And does he look at taking Caleb and saying, hey, this is 3 more years of me working in Chicago? Because
sure,
not to say he has the excuse for the fallback, but he does have the I drafted this kid. Let me at least see it through to him, becoming a full-time successful player.
Yeah.
Eberflus didn't draft Fields, Poles didn't draft Fields. So
right.
Neither of them are tied to him. I don't have enough time in my day to do this, but it would be interesting to go back and so where was Poles before he was general manager of Chicago? I forget.
He was in Kansas City.
Yes, you're right.
And was part of the group that brought in Patrick Mahomes. So
I was going to say, it'd be interesting to see if you could find any sound bites on his evaluation of Justin Fields when he wasn't even in Chicago.
Sure. Yeah.
So I feel like that would give you the pure unbiased, like, this is what I think of the kid.
Yeah. I think Bears fans would have dug those out at some point. So
yeah, there's plenty of you. I'm sure somebody would have found it.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, it's a really good point. But I mean, the other side of this too is Fields is going into his 4th year, right? So he's still a cheap contract. So even if you pick up the 5th year option, you have options with him if things aren't working out next year. Like, some team would take him on in a 5th year deal that's like $20 million, because that's basically what a veteran quarterback's going to be anyway. So if you trade out of the first pick with another team and get yourself another pick in 2025, you could very easily say, like, we're gonna reload with Fields. We're gonna bring in a Marvin Harrison Jr. and one of the best, offensive linemen in the class. We're gonna see what we can do next year. If it doesn't work out, I got 2 first-round picks. I got my own, and I got somebody else's. Let's say they trade with the Commanders, the Patriots, or somebody, right? And I got those 2 picks, and I can work my way up and get the quarterback next year too. Now, this class is supposed to be a pretty good class for quarterbacks, where next year is not maybe as hot, but every year somebody comes along. Joe Burrow wasn't even a name on anyone's radar the year before he became the number 1 pick in the draft. So, like,
yeah, because you also because Quinn's going back to Texas, so
Yep.
he'll be there next year. I was trying to think of other names I could think of off the top of my head that'd be draft eligible next season.
yeah. Michael Pratt, is he coming out? The kid from Tulane. There was a lot of talk that he might go through the portal because he can get
I'm
a big
not
NIL
sure.
deal.
Um,
So he was one of them, but there's always a name. There's always a name that comes up.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's
even
the
going
kid
into
from
this year,
kid from Georgia, also Carson Beck.
exactly.
He'll
Even
be
going
draft
into this year,
eligible next
there wasn't that much hype around Michael Penix right now, who's getting beat in the national championship right now. But I mean, wasn't a lot of hype around him either. And so, like, guys show up, guys produce, and they become.
Look at Anthony Richardson.
Absolutely.
He had like what less
he
than
wasn't even. We weren't even talking about him that much right now last year. And
Yeah,
he became the 4th pick overall.
Yeah, I think he had like less than 200 snaps at the quarterback position
Right.
overall.
Right.
1 year prior to his draft class last year. So yeah, people are always coming out of nowhere, and there'll always be the next quarterback.
Right.
The next Caleb Williams.
Right. So that's the thing, is you have to be confident that Williams is that guy. If you're like, Caleb Williams is the guy, we got to take him, then do it. That makes sense. But
Yeah.
if you're not like 100% confident that this guy's a game changer and he's going to, a franchise leader, then you can just keep going along with Fields. I mean, there's a bunch of teams that would trade for Fields right now. He's not a bottom of the league quarterback.
That is the other thing, is like Fields has a trade market, which means like you might be out on him, but not everybody is out on him.
Exactly.
It's very similar. I mean, obviously we went through it with the Browns and Baker Mayfield, and then the Giants went through it with Daniel Jones, and now we see Baker down in Tampa.
Right.
Not playing lights out football, but he's playing well enough that he took a team to the playoffs.
Exactly.
But then you have the Daniel Jones thing where it's like, we did extend him, and we kind of regret that immediately.
Sure.
So there's always going to be two ways that it could play out, and you're never guaranteed which one or the other it's going to fall on. All I know is I think what it comes down to, though, is if you're Ryan Poles and you sit there and you pass on Caleb Williams, and let's say week 1 he throws 4 touchdowns, 325 yards.
Yeah. Well, then you just chalk it up to it's the Bears.
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, obviously that's a debate we're going to be having from now up until obviously Thursday of the draft, because I don't think there's going to be a set in stone choice prior to then, unless we see a trade.
Right.
I think the hot name I see right now is Washington trading up 1 spot, because they got Josh Harris, a brand new owner, probably wants to make a big move. Caleb is from the Washington area. He grew up and played high school there.
Yep.
So, what's the cost of going from 1 to 2?
I mean, and then if you can make him pay a 1, then I do that today.
And then if you're the Bears, if you're going from 1 to 2, you're not drafting a quarterback, so you might as well go 2 to 3.
Yep.
Trade back twice. Maybe get a 1 each way along the way. So
if you could get a couple of 2s on both those deals, if you could, go from 1 to 2 and 2 to 3 and get 2 2s on each of those, and
even get the 4 2s, get the Montez Sweat pick back from Washington.
You can get 4 2s and Marvin Harrison. Yeah, I do that all day. I do that right now, for sure. And that's just a little bit of like where I'm sitting looking at it, is just going like, I would have to have total confidence in this first pick overall. And there are years where Peyton Manning comes out and Andrew Luck comes out and Joe Burrow comes out, and you're like, this guy's can't miss. Like it's a no-doubt franchise guy. But I don't know. I'm just a little worried on Caleb Williams. All the knocks on Caleb Williams are all the knocks that are on Justin Fields, right? Like, he doesn't necessarily play in time, doesn't necessarily play in rhythm. He's more about extending plays and creativity. And, can he read a defense? Can he spot, coverages at the line? Like, this just sounds like I'm listening about Justin Fields playing the Packers this week.
Yeah, I feel like Caleb's got a much better arm than Fields.
I agree with that. For sure.
I feel like the totally upside of Caleb is
higher, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And then the other question is, and we talk about this all the time, is this just prospect fatigue? Is it just like we've gone
Yeah.
past the point of Caleb Williams is good, and now we're just like, we got to say that he's not actually that good?
And anybody who's been in the scouting game as long as we have, we remember Trevor Lawrence. We remember the discourse 1 month prior to the draft. You know, it
Should take
happens.
Zach Wilson.
Yeah, it happens every time a player looks amazing his sophomore season, or even as a true freshman.
Yeah.
You know, which both Lawrence and Caleb did. And then you gotta wait to get to that third year to draft them. Like you're tired of talking about them.
Exactly.
Exactly. You talk about the highlights. You got so many hype videos out there that the conversation runs dry. So you're like, so what is not positive? What can we nitpick? And unfortunately for Caleb, that discourse came at the exact same time that he had his worst season.
Yeah.
You know, was it all his fault? No. That USC team was not very good. Honestly, looking back, they shouldn't have even been ranked.
Absolutely.
In preseason. But a lot of that was just like the Caleb hype, because we did see him put the team on his back so often,
right?
You know, throughout his Heisman Trophy campaign.
Yeah. Well, and there were a bunch of people talking about how, you know, Caleb's backup came into that bowl game and he had like 6 touchdown passes or whatever. And I was like, it was also against a Louisville team that wasn't all that great. They got a little extra hype and had some guys leaving in the portal as well. So like, I don't know. Like, do you think, I mean, Georgia's really good and Florida State was weakened, but do you think Georgia's 60 points better than Florida State?
I was going to say, I'm at the point now where I don't even like,
unless it's these 4 games or 3 games. Those 4 teams.
I don't even take bowl games seriously.
You can't. There's no way. Unless it's the actual playoff, there's no way to take these games seriously at all.
Yeah. I remember my 2 of my coworkers, they actually went out to Vegas last year around this time, and I forget which bowl it was. But they went to see the bowl game live in person, and they were asking me, like, you know, betting angles. And I was like, have you guys seen who's playing? They're like, no. I'm like, dude, like, it's like Undercity, because it was like third string this, freshman this. And these guys are live at a football game rooting for the under, which I was like, you guys, like, why would you do that to yourself? Like, they're like,
the worst thing ever.
Yeah, like every punt, every turnover, we're clapping. People thought we were crazy. I'm like, do yourselves a favor. Never bet the under.
Never.
When you go to a football
not to a live game. Yeah,
especially a bowl game where nobody's playing.
Exactly.
But yeah, with the transfer portal, with NIL money and everything, it's just going to get worse.
For sure.
You know, it's going to get worse before it gets better. You know, we spent almost a half hour now talking about Caleb, and I feel like we're about to talk about conference realignment and NIL, and that's about to be another hour-long conversation.
No, exactly. Well, I mean, we can definitely shift here, and we are getting into the playoffs here. And you being a Browns fan, this is an exciting time of year. I assume. I don't know what it would feel like to be in the playoffs, but we got some interesting matchups for sure. I mean, I think that Browns-Texans game is going to be a little more interesting. You seem a little pessimistic about it when we were talking earlier.
I mean, I am a Browns fan at the end of the day.
That's true.
Pessimism is built into.
Sometimes you just have to build that in so that when you lose, it doesn't hurt as much. I get it. I'm a Bears fan, so yeah. But I mean, CJ Stroud, you know, this is a guy that came into the league in number 2 overall in the draft last year. Carolina's kicking themselves watching him take his team to the playoffs. You know, when we're talking about missing on a quarterback at 1 overall, like, CJ Stroud looks like the real deal. And that game on Saturday, it's just, he makes all the plays that you need to elevate your team over the top. Like, any lesser quarterback in Houston probably doesn't win that game.
It's funny because I heard somebody on a show today talking about, like, you know, we both work in scouting, so I like listening to people and their process and reflections and everything. And this person had Stroud as his QB1 last year. Right. And he said, you know, we saw Georgia Stroud and we said, oh my God, that is the ceiling. Like, if we could only get Georgia Stroud once in a while, that'd be great. He goes, I had no idea we'd get Georgia Stroud every single week of the season.
Week. Yeah.
Which is honestly like exactly what we do get week in, week out now. It's just insane.
Well, and I mean, when we're talking about when we're scouting guys, why do we keep not listening to ourselves when we watch those games? Like, when CJ Stroud goes and almost beats Georgia, who was by far the best team in college football last year, and almost single-handedly goes in and beats them, why aren't we just going like, well, duh, he's awesome? Like, why is there any doubt with him at all?
the funny thing is that's also his last college game, which you could say is like that is like his final form
Exactly.
before
This is my
entering the
final
draft.
resume. This is
Yeah,
my this is
yeah,
everything that's led up to this.
yeah, my opus magnus, like this is
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
And yeah, and to be like, oh well, and like we were just trashing bowl games. Like, guess what? That wasn't a bowl game to
No,
trash. That was the college football playoffs.
the
Like,
semifinal.
yeah,
Absolutely. And I mean, if his kicker hit a field goal, Georgia would not have even made the national championship last year. Ohio State would have won it all, beating a bad TCU team that got to the final game last year. But
yeah.
like, we do this over and over, right? It's how the Bears draft Mitch Trubisky instead of taking Deshaun Watson, who had won 2 national championships, who had taken teams to national championships and beat the best competition at the level he was playing at. And
It's
we
how the Jaguars wind up with Trayvon Walker over Aiden Hutchinson last year.
Sure, absolutely.
Like sometimes just take the good player. Like
Exactly.
athletics, measurables, potential, ceiling, like that's all great. Sometimes you just gotta draft the good guy.
Absolutely,
like,
yeah.
Like I always joke in fantasy football because my coworkers like, oh, who do I take here? I'm like, oh, just draft the good players. Like it's not hard. It's an easy
just
sport.
take the good guys.
Yeah, take the good players.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, I look at CJ Stroud and I just go, how did we all? I mean, I think he was number one on my board, and if I remember, he was number one on your board too when we were going into the draft process last year. So like, I just don't understand where the Panthers missed on this.
But the thing is, like, it's also like I'm not walking around gloating about having him number one because
for sure. No,
we weren't even confident in that evaluation.
Oh no,
we're like,
no.
oh,
it was
he's one, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's not.
100%, absolutely.
It wasn't like we were slam dunk confident.
Absolutely, I wasn't planting flags everywhere saying this is the number one guy, but he was my number one guy, and I just it feels like. In retrospect, it's obviously a lot easier, but you look at the Panthers and the trade they made and everything they gave up, and you did it for a guy who was kind of a historically undersized quarterback to be going at the spot he was, and just the risk involved there. And now you watch Stroud and you look at Houston. We exited the draft, if you remember, after Houston made that trade to get 3rd overall with the Cardinals to take Will Anderson, and we were like, well, there's a good chance the Cardinals may have picks 1 and 2 next year. Like we were all kind of talking about the fact that like Houston's probably not going to have turned it around completely with just CJ Stroud and Will Anderson. They're going to probably still, those picks turn into what, 4 and wherever Houston's going to finish in the playoffs now. So, I mean, your luck and fortunes can change.
We were actually saying at the time, like, oh, why do they trade their pick and not the Browns pick? Like the Browns pick is going to finish so much later. Currently they're picking back to back. Like obviously that will shake out.
Exactly.
One wins,
the
one
winner
loses.
of this game will be the wrong team to have taken.
Yeah, but it's just like insane because like we said, we were shocked on stream seeing that. And I mean, offensive rookie of the year, defensive rookie of the year, those 2 picks. I mean, that's a slam dunk. It seemed crazy at the time, but kudos to them for having the cojones to really stick to your evaluation and saying like, hey, we want these 2 players in this class and we're fine walking away with less players this year and next year.
For sure. And now we're going to see Stroud play those Browns this weekend. I mean, truly feels like a, hot offense against a very tough defense. So we know what the game really comes down to, and that's, can Joe Flacco beat the Texans defense? Like, I mean, that's what it comes down to, right? Like we're going to see plenty of stops from the Browns and we're going to see points from Stroud. So can Flacco keep up and get enough to put him away?
I mean, well, thankfully we have very recent data
absolutely
to look at when it comes to that.
Yeah.
The one thing I actually wanted to pull up real fast before we get into this conversation is I'm trying to remember who Houston was missing on defense that day. I know Will Anderson was out.
Yeah, I think Anderson
and I know he
out.
was also not 100% this past weekend against the Colts.
Right.
I believe I saw him even at all in the first drive.
I don't remember Anderson being in on the first drive, but he was in for many points in the game. Because I mean, the 4th down play at the end of that game with the Colts, I thought he was lined up offside. So like I specifically remember him like being in on that. And
yeah, he was at the end. I remember, but
he had the strip sack in the game.
I caught the beginning of the game live, and I remember like specific because like I'll be honest, sometimes when I watch games that I don't have a real rooting interest. I mean, I had a rooting interest for that one, but I don't have like a very passionate rooting interest.
Right.
I'll try to key in on some players for at least a little bit just to watch their one-on-one matchups. Edge defender is one I really love to key in on because they're always on screen, no matter how bad the cameraman is, just to see, who's winning, who's losing.
Of course.
And I was looking that whole first drive, and I didn't see him a single time. Like, I guess he's really not 100%. So, um, I mean, no, as a Browns fan, he's bench him.
Yeah, exactly.
Get him healthy.
You got to save him for next week, Yeah. So I think that's going to be a great matchup. I'm actually pretty excited for that game. I think it can be a fun one. I mean, the second I saw that the Browns were matched up with Houston, I was like, I should text Dan because he's definitely be the Saturday afternoon game, because historically the Texans or the Bengals are always playing on Saturday afternoon when the playoffs come along. So, but then the other team I really want to talk about out of the AFC, we've already talked a little bit about the Chiefs and everything, and I don't think we have to go into how the Ravens are so unbelievable, but the Buffalo Bills were 6-6 right before their bye week when they lost in overtime to the Eagles. They were 6-6. They rattled off 5 straight wins, 3 of which were against the Chiefs, the Cowboys, and the Dolphins. And they jumped to number 2 in the AFC. This is going into the weekend. If the Jaguars hadn't lost, the Bills were in a position to either get the 2 seed or not make the playoffs. That's how wild this was going into this. But the reason I bring it up is it seems like the last 3 seasons now, the Bills' big boogeyman was the Chiefs, right? It was Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. And how are they going to go to Arrowhead and beat them? Well, if they're going to play the Chiefs this year, it's going to be because they beat the Steelers this weekend and the Chiefs beat the Dolphins this weekend. And the Chiefs are going to have to go to Buffalo, and they're going to have to finally play in Buffalo, which the Bills have been waiting for forever.
Yeah.
Do you think right now, when you're looking at these two teams, I know it's Mahomes, but do you think there is a way? But what do you think the odds are the Chiefs could beat the Bills in Buffalo if that is to come up?
So, okay, so I'm going to say something first of all that I talked to my friend the other day. I'm not sure if you noticed this, but does it feel like Josh Allen is like a stock car, like NASCAR racer, and they took the restrictor plate off of him again?
Yep.
Because the other night, we saw him running up the middle, design quarterback runs, just doing whatever. And I feel like beginning the season, they were really trying to,
reserve him.
Yeah, keep him in bubble wrap. And now I feel like the past few weeks, they're like, hey, listen, buddy, we saved you for this time. Let's go out there. Yeah. And now, unfortunately, Josh Allen without a restrictor plate can, he can wreck.
Sure,
we could have had the flag out for a 10-car pileup.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, he could also run sub 30-second laps.
Yeah.
I think that the home field advantage is going to be huge for Buffalo.
Yeah.
Bills Mafia, they really they show up for all their games. I'm sure Ryan Fitzpatrick will be there somewhere with his shirt off.
With his shirt off, for sure.
Biggest Bills fan, despite playing for 20 different franchises. And like we said before, I was talking about Mahomes finding the magic with Kelsey, with Rice and stuff, but I feel like that's a home field thing.
Yeah.
I feel like it doesn't travel well.
There's something different about the Chiefs playing in Arrowhead versus elsewhere. When I think of deep into the playoffs, AFC divisional round, AFC championship game, and I'm thinking of Arrowhead, I'm just like, look, this game's going to come down to the last couple minutes. Patrick Mahomes is going to get the ball, and there's no way you're going to stop him. That's what's going to happen. He's just going to drive the field and score, and there's nothing you'll be able to do. And I sit there and I think about the fact that the Chiefs are now going to have to travel to Buffalo, a franchise desperate to see a Super Bowl again, and a fan base desperate to have their team in that final game one more time after losing 4 straight in the early 90s. And all I can imagine is just they're going to get up for this game. I just see Buffalo coming with everything at them, and the Bills are a scary team when they're clicking on all cylinders. And I don't know, man. I think, to me, a couple weeks ago, I would never have thought Buffalo would have even been in consideration for, winning the AFC Championship game. And I would just be very surprised if it's not Baltimore against Buffalo for the title in the AFC. I know there's usually upsets and stuff. I don't see Pittsburgh being able to beat Buffalo, and I don't see,
especially without TJ Watt.
Right.
What is that team without TJ Watt?
Somebody was talking today, and they were saying, without TJ Watt, what is the line move? Like, is it a field goal? Like is it like 3 points in like minus
Oh, yeah.
three to even? Like he's worth that much. And if he's out, they can't beat Buffalo. There's no way. And it means Buffalo's either going to have the Chiefs, who have been in total disarray, coming up to Buffalo to finally play them, or they're going to play the Browns or Texans, the winner of that game, if Miami happens to beat the Chiefs. So the way this is shaping up, it's turned out really nice for the Bills when it looked like at 6-6, they may not make the playoffs. So very interesting storyline there, at least.
I will say the team that's going to beat Buffalo is Buffalo. Like, I feel like, we've seen it the past month, like self-inflicted wounds are what's going to do that team in. So it just comes down to, can Josh take care of the ball?
Yeah.
He
almost did it last night.
And fortunately for Buffalo Bills fans, Tua said, "Hold my beer, I got this."
Yeah. Well, I mean, he had the fumble in the red zone. He had a pick early on the first drive.
If you include the halftime possession where they just ran out of time, I think it was 4 straight red zone trips
where they didn't
ended in 0 points.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and they still won the game in Miami. And that's the thing. I know Miami has some injuries and some stuff going on right now, and it's not the same Miami team. But they had 4 straight trips in the red zone. They got 0 points. They won the game by 7 away. That's what's crazy about it. Is
think about what that game would have been if, at halftime, 1 more yard, touchdown. And then any of the, was it 2 or 3 picks in the end zone that Josh had? Like, if any of those,
they just get a field goal out of it.
Yeah, we're talking about maybe a 20-point game.
Exactly.
At that point.
Exactly. So, I mean, beating them is going to take a really strong game from the opponent, and it's going to take them, self-imploding for sure.
Yeah.
On the NFC side, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the Stafford Goff Bowl. That somehow the Lions finally got a home game in the playoffs after 30 years or whatever, and they get to play one of the most beloved players to ever wear a Lions uniform on with Matt Stafford on the Rams. In this one, I mean, what do you think? First of all, I think the Rams were a team that we kind of talked about going into the year as like, looks like they're trying to tank a little bit. Like, looks like they might want to. The QB race here and everything. And I mean, I think it's a hell of a job by Sean McVay to have turned this back around and got this team into the playoffs this year.
100%. 100%.
No, go for it. Sorry.
That's why he's in, talks for coach of the year. Despite, a 9-8 record, I feel like the Rams are the team on the NFC side that nobody wants to play.
Of course.
Stafford catches magic in a bottle. They're going to knock you out of the playoffs.
Yep. And
now they get an indoor game, which I think that's huge.
Yeah.
But I haven't even looked at this. How many NFC playoff games are outside this weekend?
Well, let's see. So
because you have
Kansas goes on bye, so Dallas is
Cowboys inside, Lions inside, and then Buccaneers.
Bucks is outside.
Yeah, but Florida, so it'll rain half the game, be sunny half the game.
Right, exactly.
So there's really not going to be any cold weather NFC games.
No, exactly.
Unless Green Bay, unless McCarthy's and Green Bay beats the Cowboys.
Sure, exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, Green Bay's the 7th seed, so they can't have a home game at any point. So,
yeah, that's true. True.
Yeah. So, in the NFC side, it would take the Eagles making the NFC Championship game and playing like the Packers or something, and then it being in somewhat cold Philly.
Yeah,
like that. That's what it would have to be.
Yeah. So I feel like the NFC is just going to be high scoring affairs all over the place.
Absolutely.
And Stafford is probably the greatest gunslinger right now.
Yeah. I mean, the last time we saw the Rams play in the playoffs, they were winning a Super Bowl. I mean, they're 1 year removed from being Super Bowl champions. They didn't get back to the playoffs last year. And so this is an interesting team. And they had Cooper Kupp as like their really only weapon there. And then Puka Nacua comes out of nowhere and suddenly, dang, how do you defend this team? And now Kyren Williams, wow, they have a running game now. And Aaron Donald is still on that defense. So I don't care what anybody says. That's a game wrecker and he's going to cause problems. And I don't know. I would not want to play them. And as as I watch my Bears beat the Lions once and should have beat them twice, like I don't know how for real the Lions really are. And a lot of people love them, but that defense is very susceptible.
Yeah, and the one thing though is we have to remember Stafford is currently held together with like duct tape and
Yeah.
popsicle sticks.
Yeah.
Longevity is not in it for that man this
Sure.
playoff run.
Sure.
So, I don't want to count a team out due to injury, but I'm just saying that Stafford is looking kind of fragile lately. I mean,
Yeah.
So,
well, and anybody, I mean, honestly, very honestly, anybody outside of the Niners winning the NFC has to be a pretty significant like underdog right now, because the Niners, as much as they did not look that great when they played the Ravens at home a few weeks back. When they're playing at home, they're a very tough team to beat, and they are not going to be away in this playoff run. I mean, until they're in Vegas for the Super Bowl, if they go.
yeah.
Dallas is probably, the top contender to maybe knock them off. And Dallas happens to be like one of the worst road teams that I've seen in recent memory. Like, for how good they look at home, they are pretty weak away. They struggled with the Panthers. The Bills beat them by like 21 in Buffalo. Arizona beat them. Like, they are not the same team outside of Arlington. So,
and the other problem is, if God forbid the game's close at the end, Mike McCarthy is clock management.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everyone's talking about last weekend Lions Cowboys and the 2-point play at the end with the rest, but like, can we not forget my man was throwing the ball up 7 with a minute 40 left, and Lions had no timeouts. Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, it is crazy though, because if we don't have an upset in the NFC in the first weekend, we are guaranteed to either have the Cowboys or the Lions playing in the NFC Championship game this year, which I believe neither team has been in that game in over 25 years or around 25 years. So it's a different NFC this year. But at the top, I don't know who knocks off those 49ers. I just don't. And if they play Baltimore in the Super Bowl, it's going to be a tough one for the Niners to win. But outside of Baltimore, I think, Buffalo is probably the only other team that I think could beat the Niners.
I mean, there's a team that already beat the Niners this season in the playoffs.
The Browns. But you don't even think they're going to beat the Texans, dude.
I mean, always the pessimist.
Yeah. Well, that was also in Cleveland on a pretty gross day, if I recall. But that's totally true. When it comes down to the playoffs, I think defense is going to be such a big factor here. In a year that we saw so many quarterbacks get injured, so many, talented skill players go down. The defensive kind of stood tall most of the end of the season. And I think that's going to kind of play into this playoffs as well, that teams like Baltimore and San Francisco and even Cleveland are kind of those teams that I think are just the teams that are going to be so hard to beat, because you got to play a pretty perfect game to be able to score on them. So,
yeah. No, I'm excited for it. It's going to be fun. I'm happy it's coming. I'm happy it's here. I'm happy we made the dance, but I said it all last week. I do not want to face CJ Stroud in the playoffs. He is the bad man right now.
Yeah.
He's the man nobody wants to play.
Here you are.
So I got to ask you as an unbiased man, playoff predictions. Give me your AFC Championship game. Give me your NFC Championship game. Give me your Super Bowl.
All right. I'm going to go on the man, this feels like it's just chalk though. So now I feel like I need to go differently. You know what? Let's go for a little bit of this will be a heartbreak for you, but I'm going to say the Browns not only beat the Texans this weekend, but they go into Baltimore and they shock the world and they knock off the Ravens.
Hey, we already did it once.
You've already done it once. And I think the one thing that could stop the Ravens is a really stout defense that just holds Lamar down.
January Joe.
Exactly. But you go up to Buffalo, and I think you take the loss there. So I'm going to say Bills over Browns in the AFC Championship game. And then let's go. I mean, it's chalk, but it's just Niners over Cowboys, I think. I just can't see the Cowboys losing at home right now. and I can't see them winning away. So like that's just kind of how it is. I think
That's how it adds up.
yeah, I mean, I think the Cowboys take care of business this weekend and beat the Packers, who have looked a lot better but are very susceptible still. And then whoever is coming between, the Lions or the Bucks, I think, are the two possible options. But whoever comes between them, I don't think they can handle Detroit or Dallas at home. But then once they go to San Francisco takes care of business. It's going to be kind of reminiscent of there was an NFC title game a couple years back where the Niners just rolled the Packers, and it was like everybody was kind of going like, man, this Packers team, though, they're pretty tough, and they've been, and then the Niners were just like, nah, we're the Niners. Like, we're taking care of this. I can't see them getting beat on that NFC side. So I'll say Niners, Bills, and what the hell, Buffalo? Let's say Buffalo wins it all this year. Let's go for it. Let's have some fun with it.
Very nice. Very nice. All right. Not biased at all. AFC Championship game. Browns. Man, I feel like it's going to be
Browns over Steelers, clearly.
Browns versus Steelers, yeah. Not popular right now, but Browns Chiefs.
Okay.
I think Mahomes, Kelsey, and Rashee Rice, they kind of just,
find their way.
Bottle up that magic show, take it on the road, and find a way to make it to the AFC Championship game.
Sure.
NFC side, actually haven't figured out if this is possible. 49ers, Lions.
Yeah, possible.
Yeah, because Lions would beat the Cowboys. Yeah, yep. In the divisional round. Yes, 49ers, Lions, Browns, Lions, Super Bowl. Let's go, baby.
Browns, Lions, Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Two teams that have never been to the Super Bowl.
Two teams that had an ON record.
Yeah. Who will stay undefeated in
Yeah.
the Super Bowl? That's the storyline. Who will stay undefeated?
Yeah. Browns, Lions.
Hey man, if it was Browns Lions,
that'd
be like one of the most fun Super Bowls to come out of nowhere in a while.
It would be.
So, yeah, that would be great.
Vegas would be quite the fun city that week.
Yeah. And now that we said all that, it's probably just gonna be, Ravens, Niners, and
Ravens, Niners, as everyone expects.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, anyway, this was fun, Dan.
This was awesome.
I'm glad we were able to finally get this going for episode 0. And I think our plan is to try to do this, every week, right? We're gonna try to get on here, talk a little football, talk a little fantasy here and there. But just kind of, hang out for our Monday nights, and hopefully people can jump on, ask us some questions, jump in on the conversation and everything.
Yeah, exactly. And, we kind of just started getting the ball rolling. So, please help us out. Subscribe to our socials. We got at BFF_pod is our Twitter handle. Also on TikTok. We will start live streaming there once we get 1,000 followers. So the grind starts for that one. You can follow us over on Instagram, Banners Fly Forever. We're live on that platform right now. Thanks anybody watching over there. And then finally our YouTube channel, Banners Fly Forever. I think Tim and I talked, we're going to be doing some one-off pieces, some mock draft content, some news stuff. And then we also have a bunch of interviews coming up. People who work in the industry, whether it's content creation, scouting, just kind of reaching out on our web of contacts and getting some good content for everybody. So we will we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for the handful of people that stopped by to say hello, and you guys take it easy and enjoy your football.
Take care. Enjoy a wild card weekend, everyone.